let's talk about this burnout thing. 2 years ago, you guys beat Bama for the title in Indy. The next morning, Reese Davis is in this seat, you're sitting across from him, and you do the next morning ESPN national interview. And I think it kind of raised some eyebrows when you took that moment, which could just be used to market your program, and you talked about coaching burnout.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the first time I'd ever heard anyone mention it, but it was the first time I saw someone take that platform and mention it. Okay, well now everyone's talking about it, and it's almost gotten to the point where it's this big chorus, and now folks are pushing back saying, folks are whining too much. Those guys get paid a lot of money. Like, what are they whining for? So, to me, I mean, if it's the right point, it's the right point. I don't care if you're a trillionaire, billionaire, or you got $5 in your pocket. But zoom in a little bit for me. All right, since then, has it gotten better or worse? And what specifically are the issues that are faced right now?
Yeah, that's a deep question, Josh. I mean, has it gotten better or worse? Things have gotten better in some areas. Things have gotten worse in some areas. I'm not here to complain as a person that makes a lot of money in this business, as a person who's had a chance to reach out and touch a lot of lives. I don't believe in whining and crying, but I do believe in doing things the best way possible. And I think every person listening to this, every person in our organization, every person in our state, they have a belief, they have an opinion. And a lot of people have different opinions of the right things, right ways to do things. I give Nick a lot of credit. Nick was very impactful for my career, but every meeting I ever sat in with him on his staff or as a head coach in the SEC for 8 years where we shared seats and shared ideas, he was always in pursuit of what was best for the student athletes. And that doesn't mean necessarily best means highest paid, most money. It's overall what's going to allow somebody to have more success in the rest of their life. And that is such a fine line and such a gray area that you ask the question, is what is better and what is worse? In some ways, our calendar's worse. December has become a little bit of a nightmare. And that's not a complaint, because I love hard work. Like, I grind. I am into the doing it better than the other team. But it's almost unimaginable what we ask some people to do. For instance, we're asking kids that are getting ready to play for a national championship against TCU in Alabama to sign a piece of paper saying that they're not coming back next year so that we can bring in a mid-year. You know, like this kid's been here, and we know he's going out for the NFL draft, and he's a senior, and his eligibility's up, but he needs to be worried about the game. But no, we can't bring in a mid-year without removing someone else. So it's called a voluntary withdrawal. They're required to sign it. It's very tough environments like that you're roster managing, and you're having to do things that you're like, well, why does this matter right now? Like, this is not the most important thing. But every team's in a different spot, so it makes it very challenging. But I can't sit here and say that it's perfect, and I think there's some ways to make it better. But there's some things that are just change inevitable, and change is inevitable, and it makes it harder.
So we're blessed enough, and we get to be in places like this. And I just wish sometimes I could pluck some folks, like the old grab claw machine, and drop them in here. Like you said, it's not resistance to hard work.
Right.
I mean, you could feel it pulsate all throughout this building. I mean, folks would work 25 hours here if they could. And it's not necessarily, when I say that, carrying water for coaches and whatnot, but I just understand, because I talk to enough of you guys, that there are only so many hours in a day. And there's a functional way that things should operate. And what I've heard from you, on and off the record, what I've heard from a lot of other guys on and off the record is, we don't need you to lighten our burden.
No.
What we need you to do is make it make sense a little bit more, I guess is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I'm trying to. For me, I think every coach that we meet with and talk about, they would just like to know, and I don't think this is asking much for the people at home, for the people out there and the fans, and really the parents of the players and the players, they'd like to know who's on their roster and who's not. And if you could just know who's on your roster for that year, I think we could live with that. I think it's really hard going into a spring or an off-season program to go grind, and you don't even know for sure who's going to be on your roster. If you could tell me, I got this guy for 365 days, and then that guy has an opportunity to go anywhere he wants to go, and at this point, even multiple times, I think every coach could live with that. That's not the complaint. The issue is not knowing who's on your roster and who's not for long periods of time. That's tough. That makes it hard to develop a team, to develop toughness, to develop a roster, and to be honest with you, for the players to become the best players they can be. I can't tell you how many kids I've seen go through the psychological, the toughest thing for them is trying to figure out, should I be here or should I be there? And they're worried about that instead of, like worried about where you are.
Yeah.
Like get better. And you think about that all the time. That weighs on your ability to be a good student, to be a good person, to be a good football player, because they always think the grass is greener on the other side.